Hi, it's Wednesday, and that means it's time to do stuff with Dice and Dungeons that has to do with building a model of the USS Enterprise command bridge, thing I'm still working on. I thought I'd change it up today and not act surprised that it actually came up and started working. So that was it. That was the thing du jour. Under all of these clamps and clothespins and alligator clips, okay, are the bodies of the three minifigs, Sulu, Kirk, and Spock, that came with the model. There's no McCoy, I guess, because I don't know. McCoy wasn't on the bridge that often. I'm not really sure. But yeah, so I put the pieces together and they're clamped, and I'm going to unclamp them. And later in the stream, I will be making an effort to sand them down so that they look okay. This didn't align very well. No, not very well at all. So it's going to be, a lot of shaping on this. The bottom of the foot needed to be over more. You can see the edge there. So that just got messed up. Especially the inside of, his left leg is just not good. But that's what I'll do. I mean, they're not really very good minifigs, so they will be what they will be. Sulu turned out kind of okay. Okay. Yeah, Kirk's body just isn't. It just didn't line up too terribly well. It's a lot better than I thought it would be, though, because the parts didn't fit together, and they still don't. There's gaps and things. So after I spent some time sanding these guys down, especially the Kirk one, and find out if it needs to be if there needs to be filler put on them. But that's not what I'm going to start with. This is I will get around to these, but first situation. Actually, I'm looking at this. That'll be filled in. Trying to see if I should just maybe put some filler on some spots before starting the other stuff. I don't know. It looks like the cement filled things in pretty well. Yeah, I'm surprised that these are aligned as well as they are at all. It was really difficult getting this thing together. But those minifigs will be the seams. You can see big seams here along the side. Very attentive here. But then there's a but first part. The but first part is the display panels that I'd been working on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, because I had to do them and then redo them again and on and on. So yeah, these were the amount of time these have taken has been mostly because of shortcuts that didn't work. So I got that's where that one. Got the bottoms painted. And the thing that needs to be done now after they're unmasked is that this is the part that's painted here, the bottoms. The tops panels are done. So what needs to be done next is this red line here. It needs to be hand painted on. I'm going to be doing that next on all of these. And then I'm going to do that first so that the paint dries, and then hopefully maybe later in the stream, what I'll be doing is masking along the red line, which by then should be dry, and the whole bottom because I don't want paint to get on it, and then masking along the bottoms of these, well, along the edges of these, so that these can, the middle part can be painted the dark metallic gray that I used for this. And then I think I'm just going to use this flat red. I could use dark vermilion. This paint is pretty close in color to the paint that I used on the railings. Oh, sorry. I'm going to take the tape off, so well, comes the tape. And I'll have a pile of tape. I need that. That's the number. It's important to have the number on there because each of these four that look identical, well, one is slightly different. Three of them look identical, but they have different numbers on them because they have different decals and they have different locations. The important part was to not get any of this paint, the spray, onto the display panel. So that's why that was excessively covered in tape and paper. Here, pile it up there. So after this red is painted on here, right along this edge, the next set of masking will go right along here, okay, and around the corner, and right along here. Okay, the bottom. Yeah, I mean, I'll just tape it along there, and then the edge underneath here that'll be mostly invisible will be painted this dark metallic color. Taping it underneath there is possible, but this is I can't really tell from the picture. It looks like the underneath there is painted the dark. It's the color of the dark gray anyway. Yeah, under here. It looks dark. Maybe it's the shadow. Maybe that's how it's going to be, but that's how it'll be painted. So this next set of masking is going to be really important because I don't want any of that dark metallic color. I don't want that getting on this or that. Right. It's already been primed. At least that happened. More by accident than by design, to be honest. This is unmasked and the tape is, and the paper is piled up. I'm going to throw it away to get it out of the way. And then choose an appropriate brush and begin to paint that edge red. It looks like it's something that should be easy and straightforward, but probably won't be. I always have to say that because, you know, if it does turn out to be easy and straightforward, then that's a real win. If it turns out not to be, then that's usually how it is, actually. But I'm doing this first in the stream so that the red paint dries so that I can get the masking done of the rest of the tops and the bottoms of this, so I can get that masking done yet during this stream, so I can get the painting done, the spray painting of the panel in between here, either later today or sometime Thursday. So on Friday, when I unmask it and go, oh, That worked out okay. I didn't get dark metallic paint on everything else and have to start over. Once that happens, then I'll be able to begin the process of putting all the decals on them. And there's lots and lots of decals. Each of these little panels here has a decal. Each of these has a decal. The tops of this display case, this panel here, has decals, and these have decals. So there's 9, 12, like 14 on each one of them. There'll be sometime next week, Monday, if it all works out, Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, depending on how much rework needs to be done if it doesn't work out. Will be just decaling. And it has to be each one of them, okay, with the number in the back, each one of them has a different set of decals. So I actually have to pay attention to what goes where. I am going to be taking a mid-session break today. Sometime, hardly any time has passed. What happened to the days, if you remember them? There was a time when I would go on about something, okay, just mutter on about something, and didn't even get started until half an hour into the scheduled stream time. I miss those days. Now here it is, 15 minutes into the scheduled stream time, and I've already unmasked all of this, which means I need to move on to actually starting to paint red stuff on them. These look so forlorn, these bodies. They're headless. The heads are just really funny. They're attached to sprue. It looks kind of gross, actually. No, I've got a wad of paper and tape here. That's the technical term, right? The modeler's technical term is a wad of stuff, but I want to not have it here. All right. So in my effort to keep my workstation sort of clean, I managed to cover all my brushes. No, nothing's in a good spot. Do I need this box anymore? There's nothing in this box anymore. It doesn't need to even be here. I'm going to carelessly just toss it onto the floor. There. Now it's gone. Out of the way. These guys are just going to keep being in the way. I'm going to keep moving them about every couple of minutes to another place because I don't want them where they are. Put all my brushes up over there so they were kind of out of the way, which it makes them hard to retrieve. My eyesight's not good enough to see which one is which from here. Okay, this is a tiny brush for tiny little detail. I don't need that tiny. This one might work. This one's a little too messy. I was using this one for the panels. I'm going to try this one. So this shouldn't be terribly difficult. I want to paint the edge. I don't want it to get down underneath here very much. It's really going to be hard to see. If it gets a little bit on the top, it shouldn't be terrible because it's a really dark paint that goes over it, and it should cover okay. But I pretty much don't want the paint to go anywhere where it shouldn't be going. Just, that's what I want. So we'll see if what I intend and what actually happens have anything in common. This is when I can talk about long-range planning and the difference between goals and objectives, aspirations, mission statements. During the paint, I've got this. I keep saying this. The filter on the microphone filters out all the interesting sounds, like the sound of this thing buzzing here as it supposedly is mixing the paint so that the paint is well mixed. Right? I mean, that's it. So why do I have this? I've got a big jar of flat red here, and I've got this little jar of flat red. I don't remember why I bought this little one. So this is a good thing that I'm doing this kind of painting early in the stream because it's when my hand is the steadiest and my focus is the best. Not great. Okay. Neither of those things is ever terrific, but it's the time of the stream when I have the best chance of not having a disaster. It doesn't mean I won't, and that's always a feature of the stream is, ooh, what really dumb thing will happen next? That was a mess. Boy, that'll take some work fixing that kind of thing. Can't finish unless you get started. That's one of the sayings. So, in the effort to get started, use red paint. And is that paint doing? Yeah. About that. I'm going to take that off. As happens sometimes with this paint, is that it gets viscous, and it doesn't, like when I was brushing it on, but when I brushed over it, it pulled itself off. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to try thinning it a little bit. Get some of the sprue. And test it after it's been thinned. So after it ages in the bottle like this, it does that. It just gets gummy and then doesn't cover. Yeah, see, it got a little bit on the bottom edge there, but that will never be seen. That's the expectation, is that it will never be seen. And I'm going to take it off anyway. This happened with the gray paint as well. I had an older bottle, and when I attempted to paint with it, it did the same thing. It just was gummy on the surface, and then it pulled off from itself. And fortunately, I found a new bottle, a fresh bottle, and that worked. But if this doesn't work, I've got this. I don't know how old this is. Might be better. I'll mix this up and see how this works. This is the weirdest thing how that happens. Part of it is these paints just haven't been used in a long time. Well, yeah. So I was complaining about moving ahead too quickly for the stream today, but I didn't expect to have to spend the next the better part of a half hour trying to get the paint to work. Open the bottle, put it on, but that didn't work. That didn't happen. There's no substitute for just shaking it by hand. I don't know if it's like superstitious behavior, if it's real or not, but there it is. I've got this jar that I was using that wasn't working, that thinned out, and if either of those work, I've got some Viejo red that comes close to in the correct color. What I need is little bits of plastic there. Add some laying. Doesn't have any primer on it, but it will tell me what the consistency of the paint is like, and whether it's going to be usable or not. Expectation anyway. Seems to be working better than a little jar. Maybe I'll just hopefully I don't need two coats. I don't want to have to spend a lot of time recoating, but oranges, reds, yellows, whites, notorious for not covering. Okay. This paper towel is curled up and it's going to get in the way. Not even the paper towels are cooperating today. Okay, try again. Looks like I might need to do this twice. Stuff usually dries pretty quickly. I should be able to get a second coat on. Probably like in 45 minutes or less than an hour, or about at least an hour. What's up with, good grief. You don't see these things until painting, but the spot there that where the plastic didn't fill the mold. I'll need 2 coats just to do it. Now, I also need to paint right around the edge here. This is supposed to not be visible. This is where the 2 parts come in contact with each other. But just right around the corner. What I'm saying is, you can see it here. These are supposed to come together like this, right? So that yeah. But the corner, the edge here probably will be visible. Yeah, well, that doesn't look too bad, but it will need a second coat just to cover evenly. That I've ever really used. Just the reds, whites, yellows, they all do this sort of thing. Putting on a second coat, I always find, it's just not only does it just take more time, but each coat presents its own opportunity for an oops. If you watch the stream at all, you know what I mean. Every brush stroke is an opportunity for an oops. So putting on a second coat doubles the chances of oopses. So I'm doing this. Yeah, there is a chance for an oops. So there's a red edge there now, and I'd be taping the red edge. But there's a chance this would not be good at all. The chance that if the red paint, there could be a white stripe, depending how the taping goes. Like if the tape gets in the way of the edge here, it could end up with a red stripe, a dark metallic surface, and a tiny little edge of white primer. Well, I'll worry about that a little bit later. The option that I really don't really want to use is to slop a little bit of red paint up over the edge. So that it goes up that slightly over the edge. Do is try to make sure that it gets right, at least right up to the edge, especially when I do the second coat. Yeah. So things are going to go more slowly than planned yet again, because I have to second coat this, which means I have to let this dry and then paint it again. Should be plenty of time in the stream to do that. Um, it's just taking longer than anticipated. So having to do things twice. Really grabs onto the paint. I'm going to have to do some significant brush cleaning here. I have to resort to lacquer thinner. The one thing I learned that I didn't do today that I should have, because it's a lesson I've learned, is that if there's going to be a thing that's going to be more difficult, do that first and then do the easier ones. And I'm bringing that up because the last one that I need to paint is the most difficult one. These, all four of these have nice kind of sharp edges along the top there. Nice clean edges. they're flat. When I left to the and the small one is not that way. It's rounded, so it's going to be more difficult to get right, and more difficult to tape later too. I think this is the weapons station or something. So if any of these are going to end up looking just a little bit less than really B plus-ish, it's going to be this one. Getting it underneath. But as I said at the beginning, it's not going to show. It's like if you like a lot of things, if you're doing it yourself, like bookshelves and whatever, that if you look along like the bottom edge of the table or something, you'll see that it's just not finished that well. Well, see how that looks after. Yeah, well, now there's a red edge. There's a red edge that needs to be second coated in about 45 minutes or so. I want to work on the minifigs, of course, and then come back to that after the paint is mostly dried. And then I'll see. See if there's enough time to get them masked today or not. There would be if I didn't have to second coat them. Obviously, there would be a lot more time to put tape on if I could start it earlier, which I can't do because I need to put a second coat on. Yeah, that's pretty clean. Lacquer thinner after the second coat. Looking at the bottoms are, it's pretty wiggly underneath there, but that's okay. I want to make sure it's covered. Just the corner there. The top line, that's going to be important. And yeah, I'm not looking forward to a bajillion hours of touching up if I end up with a little white line between the dark and the light and the red. But that will be what it will be. get to the minifigs here. The issue with the minifigs is that the front and the backs come together, and then when they do that, they leave a seam, a visible seam line, and the seam lines need to be sanded away so that they aren't there anymore. But a cricket. Crickets are supposed to be good luck, but I don't know if I need to have it on my workbench. So we've got some 400 grit and some finer paper, 1,000. I don't know if the 1,000 will work well enough. Let's see. I prefer to use this because then I get fewer scratch marks. I'm going to start here. You can see. Maybe I can pull this down. If I look up every now and then to see if I'm on camera, this would be okay. But you can see that there's a seam line here. Not so much on this side where the parts didn't quite line up and where the cement oozed out. Yeah, that just needs to be sanded down. Yeah, that's going to take forever. Be sanded until it disappears. Most frequently, the way to tell if it's disappeared is by feel. A lot of times, these kinds of issues, you can't really see them until they're painted, and then it has to be all redone. Sometimes it's the glue line. You can see it there. It's a lighter, slightly lighter color. Sometimes it works out that you just sand it until that slightly lighter color just totally disappears. Like it is up here on the top of the shoulder. And if it totally disappears, then it shouldn't show up ever again because it's gone. Kind of the seam line is gone, but there's kind of an unnatural look to the contour of the shoulder here. It's got like a shoulder ridge. Well, part of this is because the minifigs are, okay from side to side, but very, very thin front to back. So in profile, they look pretty unrealistic. But then again, this is kind of the quality of this model. But this is a way to, this does fill the time between first and second coats of red for the paint to dry. Unfortunately, as I said, the hope, the aspiration, the desire, not quite the goal, because that was kind of beyond control. The desire was that be able to mask, do the masking. But no, I got to second coat things. So after the paint is dry, instead of putting masking tape on things, I need to put more paint on it. The kind of poor build quality of the model here, the parts didn't line up. Yeah, slightly my problem because I didn't, get them aligned perfectly when I put them together, but partly the fault of the model itself because it's two sides, the front and the back, don't exactly align. If you were to buy this as a minifig, you would be really unhappy with the quality of it. The detail. I mean, the lack of detail, really. His hands don't really have any fingers. I mean, sort of. There's a slight impression of fingers. Having difficulty getting the seam line. These bands on the wrist here. Seam line goes right over them, and it would be, sanding it off can mean that the bands kind of get sanded off as well. Which will make painting more difficult later. But if I don't get them off, they will not. It will look bad. It's really tempting to use a needle file on these because then I can get into the little crevices, but that they leave really deep scratch marks. Okay, it's not too bad. I'm going to just rub it down with the 1000 grit here. Try to polish it a little bit. To the next part, the leg. Now let's see. Yeah, there's an opening here. Didn't quite come together. I'm going to have to fill that with some putty. Come back and sand this all again. Let's say though that it's not terrible. The line, the cement filled these gaps in pretty well. A fair amount of the sanding I'm doing isn't so much the the line is that the shape of it is just wrong. Apparently, I can't stand and talk at the same time. My monologue has disappeared. But the last two streams, when I did get around to kind of muttering about things, I was talking about Yogi Bear, just to talk about something from the 50s and 60s, and that is a thing. Yogi Bear was a thing then, cartoon show. I was saying, and I will, yeah, it's just like a ridge there, isn't there? Yeah, that's not coming off yet. Could feel it, but I couldn't really see it. It looked like, from one angle that it was there, but sanded off without losing some of the contouring that they have on the pants. There isn't much. It's got a wrinkly shirt. For some reason, they thought that the tunic part up here is all wrinkly. I mean, it is on the box top. Yeah, this wasn't very good. It's because I wasn't sanding that. I was doing the right side first. I'm not even I'm not even keeping track of where I am. Well, I know where I am. I'm in the basement doing this stream, but where I was on the model, I started talking and got turned around. Yeah, so again, the issue here isn't so much that there's a seam, but that where the seam is, it creates a misshapen boot. Trying to get this right at the bottom of the hand. Seems superfluous to flatten, worry about the bottom of the feet, but it's supposed to stand on a stand, and if it's not flat, it's not going to stand flat, right? Right. What about the inside of the leg? That's a challenge getting in there. Is requiring It's requiring more sanding down than I anticipated. It's just taking longer than I expected it would. Let's see. Yeah. So I'll do it. I'll finish this one, and then I'll test the paint, and then maybe I'll do a second coat. I'll get impatient a little. I'm going to get a little impatient. I'm just warning myself already that that's what's going to happen. Put the second coat of paint on. And as I said, I'm going to be taking a break, more than just like the 2-minute break that I frequently need to do. It'll be a little longer than that. After I put the second coat of paint on the edges of the things there. Yeah, the display panels. I'm resorting to generic words. Oh, I'm going to put some paint on the things. That's pretty sad. Just looking at this, the stripes over here don't line up with each other. Well, enough about Yogi Bear. I don't have anything more to say about Yogi Bear. What we know is that he was smarter than the average bear, and that was his catchphrase, and he said it a lot, and never let us forget that. And the other thing is, I was talking about it, is how old men, some of them pretend like they thought they were Yogi Bear, and they to talk like the character. Like, why? Why would you want to be like Yogi Bear? I don't know. So that reminds me, makes me think about humans imitating. So this is something that's really prevalent at like zoos. I don't know if you all have zoos where you are, or places that you can. I mean, every place does, but I don't know if you get to them or not. But if you do, one of the phenomenon, one of the things that happens at zoos is that you'll see people imitating the animals. And you go, what is the purpose of that? Why is like an adult human standing in front of an enclosure full of primates, making monkey sounds? Just, is this a reversion? I mean, is what's happening here, is this an evolutionary reversion to a more primitive state? I mean, it is. When you think about it, it's all some of these things. It's always best just not to think about it, because then you go, this is weird. Why does this happen? One of the things that's happened, and I do think it's weird, is people like imitating animals. I mean, you do it with your cats and your dogs. Are you attempting to communicate at their level? Are you reverting to their level? Are you trying to become a canine, a canid? Do you really want to be like a chimpanzee or a bonobo? I don't know. I think it is I think a pretty bizarre phenomenon. So I'm just going to say that. So that's not meant to be a criticism of you people out there who go around to zoos and try to imitate the animals that you're looking at. It's just, I just find it odd, to do that. It's an editorial thing. I probably, I try to avoid that kind of stuff on this stream, because people always have strong opinions about stuff, and you get on the wrong side of someone's opinion about stuff, and then they don't watch your stream anymore, and they don't do a follow, and they don't go to patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons. It's patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons and become a patron of Dyson Dungeons. They don't do that if they don't like your editorial content. So I try to steer clear of that as much as I can. But sometimes it leaks out, because it's like, I think it's weird. People go to zoos and act like the animals that they're looking at. Lots of people do it, so maybe it's not weird. Maybe it's weird to think that it's weird. That could be. After all, what defines weird? Just being different than one's expectations, different than the average, whatever average is, the typical, the most common. But one's perception of what is most common isn't always the same as what is most common. We're not, as humans, this is a true thing, we're not really very good at quantification. Okay? Knowing numbers, knowing probabilities, knowing whether something is typical or not. We tend to significant, like quantities of things, even significantly over and or underestimate. And some people overestimate, some people underestimate, but few people actually estimate accurately when it comes to like numbers of things, the frequency of the occurrence of an event in the population. We tend to take, a lot of it depends on the sort of, I'll call it the intensity of the event. We tend to overestimate the frequency of occurrence of things that are intense. Sometimes it's like I'll use an extreme example, like an airplane crashing, which is a very rare event. When I was growing up, in the 50s and 60s, it was not unusual to have several, just in the US alone, to have several fatal airline accidents a year. It was just what it was. And there's, and there were times before that where, just like in the 30s and 40s when flying was just starting. I mean, commercial flights and things were, those kinds of things were actually much more common than they are now. But if one happens, like one out of literally millions, uh, we get the impression that it happens more frequently than it does. Yeah, air travel used to be really pretty scary. I mean, there were like 3 or 4 musicians who died in plane crashes. Buddy Holly was one. Usually they were smaller planes, but yeah, Buddy Holly was one. There was somebody, I think Otis Redding. Maybe that's why bands traveled by bus, right? I don't know. But there was one, this was even back like in the 80s and stuff, we were getting off the plane, or just before we were getting off the plane, the flight attendants would say, "Thank you for flying. I hope you enjoyed the safest part of your journey." And what they were meaning when they're saying that was that at least, like per mile or per trip, even. I mean, certainly per mile, because compared to car travel, you're traveling a lot further on a plane than in a car, usually, at least for a single trip. They said, I hope you enjoyed the safest part of your journey, because people were getting off the plane and into motor vehicles, which, although much safer now than they were back in the 50s and 60s, or before that. This is coming along. Whoever thought that joining a front and the back of a body together was somehow a really a good idea. I'm not sure how else they could do it. They probably could have molded this as just one thing, but there would still be seam lines on it where the edges of the molds came together. Some of these, if there's still issues, aren't going to be visible until it's primed. I found that to be the case. It looks good. Okay, it all looks fine. And then it's primed, and then, oh, look at that. There's a gap where there's a ridge. This is taking a long time. Just a lot of surfaces to be sanded. Some of them difficult to reach. Some of them just not going to be that well done, like on the insides of the legs. But it's a lot better than when I started. And it's starting to look okay. The collar, to decide if the collar is painted the shirt color or whether the neck shows. I don't know. I'll have to look at the box top to see. Well, there's Spock with mostly no seams showing on the sides. But there's Sulu with seams showing on the sides. The badge is disproportionately large on these figures. The communicator badges. It's going to be. I really hope that the collar is part of the uniform. I'm just thinking ahead to putting the heads on. Thinking ahead. I am thinking of the heads. If the neck, well, it comes down to trial fitting, doing some trial fitting of the head on the body and seeing what I'm into there. We could talk about car safety. I think maybe I did that once before, but reruns. Thinking back about some of the car trips we took as kids, really kind of wonder how anybody survived on the roads at all. Seriously, you just wonder, given the state of safety on the vehicles today. There weren't any seat belts. I mean, I don't know. This was back in, the mid to late 50s, early 60s. They're riding in my uncle's station wagon with my cousins. So there were 4 adults Hi, Who. Yes, I will do a flip. So there are four adults, and usually at that time, or maybe five kids. Yeah, you count that right. Nine. There are nine people. The front and back seats of the station wagons were bench seats. You could get six people. Could sit six people, three across in the front. Yeah, seriously, three across in the front. That was a thing. That was common. Uh, and three in the back seat. Do a flip for Who here. Thanks for joining in, Who. Yeah, let's do paint and not paint. Back up the camera a little bit. So, yeah, 6 foot. I don't know what it was, but it was 6 feet. 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 4 to 2. Not paint. Pink only got two this time, even though I am doing a little bit of painting by putting the red stripes on these. Started working on Sulu here. And it didn't look too bad, but then it did. Okay, I'm going to I'm going to put the second coat of paint on. Put these decapitated torsos aside. Yeah. Paint back out. I am making progress. I got the bottoms spray painted. I'm painting the stripes. And after the paint dries for the second time, I'll be masking along this edge and along that edge. And then the middle part will get painted a dark metallic color. That'll be a real test. If that goes well, it'll be okay. If it goes poorly, I don't know. The rework is going to be quite a challenge. See right off that this looks a lot better with the second coat on it. Glad I don't have to worry about the underside of the counter here because I'm making a mess of it. Two coats should be enough. Saying earlier, my concern don't really want to deal with, but at some point I mind is that after the top is painted, whether there will be a little white line. Nice sharp edge right along here. And if the taping works, if the masking works, it'll be just fine. If it doesn't, I'm going to have a real issue that will have to be dealt with. Until I find out. That was stupid to say. I won't know. I won't know if there's a problem until I find out if there's a problem. Hi, Aman. I am. The unmasking worked well. The bottom bits are now painted the appropriate color. And I am painting the edges of these red because that is Star Trek-y authentic. So when I was watching a later version of Star Trek, I think it was Next Generation TNG, the edges of the counters were not red unless there was a red alert. And then they lit up red. And I said, oh, well, that's cool. I don't need to paint them red because they only are red during a red alert. And then Nicole, one of the members of Dyson Dungeons who plays Zoria on Sewell, the Changeling Druid, said, no, I'm going to show you a picture, a real picture of the bridge, and the edges were red. And I said, but there's no red alert. And she very, very nicely pointed out this was the original series. There was no budget. They didn't have any budget for light up edges on their just control sections that, unlike TNG where they had a budget where they could either light them up red or not. That wasn't the case in the original series. They were just red. I suppose it was handy. They were red, so you could see them and didn't bump into them. Maybe it was a safety thing. No, it's just that they were just red. So that's why I'm spending time here painting them red. And why then I'm going to be spending time masking them off. So I can paint the control panels different. Oh yeah, there were many different. There was A, B, C, D. There were so many different enterprises. Yeah, they put their money into the opening doors. That was always I don't know if that was apocryphal, just or whether it was really true that the doors didn't open when they should and people were bumping into them all the time. I imagine that was the case. The other thing that I always found very odd, and this went on even on all the Star Treks, no matter what they were. Yeah, that's right. Somebody just had to do them because they weren't automatic doors. You would, okay, so I have to just say, seriously, you go to a store and every place has automatic doors. You walk up to it and they open for you. But they couldn't get that right on the set of of Star Trek. They couldn't afford the same technology that like a grocery store or a department store had. But then, thinking back at it, I'm trying to remember, because I was living during that time, there might not have been the the automatic doors. They might not have been as ubiquitous as they are now. Actually, when I'm thinking about it, it's been something that became more common later on. They definitely, yeah, I guess they definitely didn't have the money. When I do remember being kind of amazed at the level of special effects on the TV show when it first came out. Now you look back at it and you go, wow, that was pretty primitive, extremely primitive. So, lights in the future. Okay. This actually always bothered me, still does, is why do the lights make a sound when they are turned on? And that kind of whoop, lights come on because um, lights just don't do that. Even in our houses, way back, even in the 50s, there were the switches. Then were push buttons. They weren't flip switches. They were push buttons, and there was a click. You'd click the lights on or click the lights off. That was a thing that you did because the light switches just had a, and that's how they were built. They were spring loaded inside, and they did make a clicking sound. But by the 60s, even in the houses, we had flip switches instead of buttons. I mean, that was a big deal. You'd flip a switch instead of pushing a button for on and off. Boy, that kind of dates me. I don't think most people don't know that light's turned on by pushing a button. The top one for on, the bottom one for off. Some of the buttons were really, yeah, for the audio. Yeah, I know it was there. Something had to happen. There had to be some sort of sound, right? But for the lights, really, that was very odd. I thought red paint is tenacious. The light switch technology changed a lot as I was growing up. It went from these push buttons. Some of them were very fancy. Um, the standard light switch was just a black button, two black buttons, one on top of the other. They were vertically mounted, so you go on and off. And it really did. It made a very loud clicking sound. You could tell if somebody had clicked the lights. I think we even said that, click the light on because it made such a clicky sound. Um, but then you could get fancy ones. You get fancy buttons where the top button, the on button, had a mother of pearl, and it really was. Seriously, like the button was made out of either glass, black bakelite plastic, or even like ebony wood or something. But the on button would have a mother of pearl inlay circle on the button, so it was whitish for on, those were expensive, but that was a fancy thing. Well, that's really true. I mean, you just had to have the teleport deck, and then everybody got all a little sparkly. That was a good special effect, the sparkly bit. Um, but yeah, to get a place by that, even within the ship, that was pretty. You're right. That was a good cost saving device, and a nice little plot feature as well. The light switch technology, yeah, actually developed significantly as I was growing up, from these push buttons that clicked to the switch style, where you flick the switch up or down. That was a huge change, going from the buttons to the switches. And the early switches also clicked. You know, the off and on positions were really quite fixed. Um, and it would click on or click off. So we still clicked the lights, could still click the lights off or on. But it was like switches instead of buttons. And they were a lot easier to work with. I mean, sometimes the buttons are really hard to push, the springs behind them. Seriously, when I remember being a kid, like 5 or 6 years old, having to practically push it with my thumb and my whole hand just to make it happen. But then there was another breakthrough, and I remember my dad talking about it because it was like a thing. It's the silent switch. The silent switch came out, and that, when you flip the switch up or down, it didn't click anymore because it wasn't a spring loaded with a catch. It just, wow, a double switch. See, that was a fancy thing to do, is to have two switches on a light. So, like, if you came in from the kitchen, okay, you switched the light on, and then you went out through the dining room to the living room. You could switch the light off on the other side, the double switch. So that was really cool. So you could turn the light off. You didn't have to turn the light off and climb into your bed, which was kind of dangerous, or you didn't have to. Yeah, that's what you'd really have to do, is turn the light off ahead of time, or you'd have to have a family member show up and turn the light off for you because the switch was on the wall by the door. So we think that that is being pretty common nowadays, and it is, to have two switches for the room, one on either side going to and from. But that was actually, back then, that's really sophisticated wiring. We didn't have that. I don't remember that we actually ever had any, especially at my grandmother's house, which was built like in the 20s. Any switches like that were. We'll go back to Sulu here. But the silent switches were really kind of cool. And it was like, oh, how did those work? That's almost like magic. We took one apart just to see how it worked, just to show it. And it was a little ball of mercury in a glass tube. I don't think they can make those anymore. Nobody can have mercury anymore. We used to have mercury all over the place. We had mercury thermometers, for when we were taking our temperature, we were sick, and these switches, the silent switches, had a little ball of mercury in a glass tube. And when the switch was switched up, the ball of mercury tumbled to the bottom of the tube and made a contact. Yeah, that's a really good idea when you're going to bed, and if you have to get up during the night to like use the restroom or something, to be able to turn the light on. It's a really important safety feature. That's a really nice thing, having a light switch by the bed. So yeah, that's evolutions of light switches. Although I kind of miss the original, the old-fashioned push-button light switches that were hard to operate, especially the fancy one with the mother of pearl inlay on the on switch. This was back in the day too, when you didn't have circuit breakers. There were fuses to protect from overload. Houses didn't have much electrical stuff then. I mean, it really didn't. There was some things in the kitchen, like there would be a stand-up electric mixer if you're fancy. There was the refrigerator. Stoves were usually gas. Electric stoves weren't that common. So I remember my grandparents' house, like I said, it was built in the 20s. There were, like, I think for the entire house, there were 4 fuses, 15 or 20 amp fuses. So there was, you could run some light bulbs and the television and the radio. That was pretty much it, really. The refrigerator, I think, was the most electrically intensive thing. Oh, on a Sunday, okay. Yeah, our D&D thing broadcasts streams on us on Sundays. So did you get to play Haroon on Monday? Did you have your session, Oman? I'm just curious because I think you said that you were going to have another session this last Monday. Ah, okay. Did that went well? What happened during your session? What were some of the highlights? That's pretty cool. So what was the outcome of the visitation? Did Haroon Was there a particular message from the goddess, or just a visitation? Okay, just an appearance. I guess that was pretty profound. How did Harun and the other players react to the? Okay, if I keep working on the same side all the time, I flip the thing over and get confused. Okay. One would expect when you're visited by a goddess that one would be awed. That makes tremendous sense. You flip Sulu over and start working on the other side. Real issues on the elbow here. I find this is pretty good sandpaper, but it clogs easily. It loses its abrasiveness really quickly. So I end up going through a fairly large amount of it. That's right. You have to gather your own herbs, don't you? You either have to gather them or buy them. I probably should pay attention to what I'm doing. Yeah. Thank you. Dealing with Sulu's right elbow here. Sulu's right elbow is being very reluctant in giving up its pointiness created by the seam. I might, between now and Friday, I might prime Spock and Sulu if I get the sanding done here. Because there's a really good chance, there's a high probability that after they're primed, they'll need some additional sanding. It's just sometimes I found this over and over again, really, with some frequency, that I'm using a file here because there's just edges of the tunic do not match up. That sometimes it looks fine when it's sanded, but then there's when it's painted, flaws just become more obvious. Oh no. Okay. Yeah. You just get kind of into a daze almost, just and metal filing metal just takes forever. This plastic is fairly soft, and so I mean, relatively speaking, it's going pretty quickly, but still taking a long time to get them ready, and so that the seams aren't showing. I'm going to take like about a 10 to 15-minute break starting at noon. We'll probably put the break. I want to put the break sign on, for that. And then I'll be back and I'm going to start masking these guys. I'm not sure there's going to be enough time to get that done. It might be one of those things where I just finish masking them like off camera later. I didn't expect to have to put 2 coats of paint on. And that just added to the time. But I'd like to get them painted between now and Friday. So again, what I may end up doing if I can't get the masking done on these along here and there, if I can't get that done on the stream today, I might just take some time either later today if I can fit that in, or maybe tomorrow to make that happen. Because otherwise I lose an entire, I'll just lose an entire week almost of working on this. To worry about scratch marks on the bottoms of the boots, do I? Can file that down. Much effort for such tiny little gains in terms of the appearance of the model. Shouldn't be doing this. There's a really big ridge here, and it's really hard to reach with the sandpaper. Yeah, I give these once overlooking, not overlooking. I'm going to look them over one more time before I to priming them. They have no heel on their boots. Guess that makes sense. I mean, they probably did on the show, but they don't here. Okay, well, I said after I prime these, I'm probably going to find areas that still will need some attention. But it's really hard to see those with the raw plastic. I mean, you can kind of see that there was a seam there, but looks like it's gone. It is a really sharp elbow. Yeah. So after it's primed, I'm probably going to have to sand it down and prime it again before it looks all right. There's just going to be some spots here and there, but I won't know that. I won't know that until it's painted and I see how it ends up looking. So I'll let you look at these two headless torsos here while I take a quick break. I will be back in about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. And when I get back, I'm going to start masking these things and see how far I can get going. Be right back. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do now is start masking these guys. I know usually I want the tape to go across but not bend over the edge, but I really don't want to get any of the dark metallic paint on the view screen. Okay, not at all. So I'm going to put this tape over up to the edge like that, using the big tape. And I'm actually going to bend it over just a little bit to protect the view screen. And I'm going to cover this whole thing. So, with paper and other tape. We'll do all of them in this direction because this way I can see better. And then come back and do the yellow, the red edge. But if this bends over the edge, then I've got, kind of a little extra layer of protection there. We want to push it down with a toothpick. I've decided that getting these ready to be painted is a very high priority. And so I'm going to, if I need to, I'm just going to go long today to get it done. Slow down a little bit. So what happens about this time into the stream is several things happen. One is I've had a little too much coffee, so that makes me a little jittery. The other is that I start getting chilled, even if it's very warm outside. Okay. Basement gets chilly. It just gets cold. And so this time I took the little break. I used the opportunity to put on this vest, which is a good thing because it keeps me much warmer. And that's a good thing because then I'm more comfortable. But part of it is just, losing focus a little bit. But the other thing that goes on is I get chilled and I've had too much coffee. And as a result, I start losing focus just a little bit. And this is a little bit of a challenge here. It's always something. So I don't want the tape on that side panel. Tape to go around the edge here. Okay. Now I'm going to use slightly narrower tape because it's easier to control on the fronts. Then these need to get wrapped, and that needs to get wrapped with probably paper and blue tape. Now this I don't want to go over the edge. This needs to come up right to the edge, but not over it. That is to say, I don't want this to bend over the top. I also, this is it doesn't stick. It sticks to where I don't. Because it's important for the metallic paint to go right up to the edge. I just know I'm going to end up. Dang it. The alternative, I'm really unhappy about this. The alternative is to paint the red up over the edge, which would mean another coat of paint. Thought about doing that is overpainting it and then taping it so that the metallic would definitely. I've done this before with the Savoya. You need to get the tape right on the edge. Which I guess is possible. I'm going to try that. What I'm afraid I'm going to get is, I talked about that, is a thin white line between the metallic paint and the red. I could have overpainted the red onto the top there and then just counted on the tape to get a nice clean line. I don't know. I'm going to try this. We'll see how it goes. May end up having to do a whole lot of like little bits of red touch up, maybe. I'm not sure. I hope it turns out okay. Otherwise I'll have to redo it. I mean, there's a real possibility that I would have to redo some of this. I really should have just overpainted the red. I mean, I really should have done that. And then I wouldn't have to be worried about this. Because the dark color would almost certainly have covered the red. Here, there's going to be a tiny spot where the red, I don't know. I'll find out. This will either work or it won't. This will either be I knew what I was doing or I obviously didn't. I guess the worst thing that can happen is I'll just have to try to hand paint the red. The red line again. Yeah. I think I messed up. This would have been a lot faster if I'd done it the other way too. And I could just like put it right on the edge instead of trying to get it matched exactly with the part that's painted. Just being so careful trying to get a nice clean edge with the red that I wasn't really thinking ahead to how the nice clean edge would be coming from the tape. So at this point, for me, it's really hard to tell right now whether this is going to work, will have saved me some time, or whether this is going to be a really bad idea, and I'll end up having to do rework. It doesn't help that the tape isn't sticking. What the heck? Yeah, I'm getting the after last after the break. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it really isn't. It's just not sticking. Weird. It's clearly taking much longer than it needed to because of I just didn't didn't make the right decision. As I talked about it, I said, well, this might work better if I overpaint it a little bit and then use the tape to make a nice clean edge. But I didn't do that. I may end up with the same situation that I ended up with on the yeah, no. See, I could paint the red back onto the metallic. It'll probably take a couple of coats to do that. But I can't paint the metallic onto the red because it dissolves the paint. So I'll just have to hope for the best here, or hope that if I do touch up, that my skill level is amazing. It's either doing this, hoping for the best, or it's putting more red paint on and not doing the taping until Friday. Because if I overpaint it a little bit on the top, okay, I know that the metallic will cover the red. On the other hand, it could dissolve it. And then, oh yeah, that could happen too. That could happen. And that would be even worse, is it could dissolve the red paint, and then I would just have a red schmoosh all along the edge. I'm just going to try this. I'm going to do this and hope that it works. Yeah, I hadn't. I'm glad I thought of that. Is that the spray paint does dissolve, because I found that out the hard way several times. It does dissolve the acrylic, and if it dissolves the red paint in any significant amount, it would create a really hideous mess. Okay, well, I've done the best I can with this, and I hope it works. If not, then I've just got a bunch of rework that I have going to end up having to do that I don't really want to do. To check the sides here. we're going to go. I'm going to keep doing this till I'm done. So I'm going to be going long today. I'll be going over the usual time, not by a lot, but by some, because I want to get this done so that I can go ahead and paint these today and tomorrow. Yeah, this is the it sticks to where I don't want it, not to where I do. I'm going to have to cut strips of paper off to wrap them around the bottoms and the tops, just to make sure that they're fully covered. I'll probably go, I don't know, I got 15 minutes left. I'll probably end up going like 10 minutes over or something. It won't be really long, but just a couple of minutes longer than the usual ending time, so that I can get this done and painted and hope for the best. Hope for the best on Friday. I need some strips of paper. I hope I made the right decision. I don't know. I won't find out until Friday when I unmask this. When I unmask these. Then I'll see. And I'll see what happens. Whether I've got whether it's adequate or whether it needs to be redone. I'm not sure. Yeah, the thing here is I just need to fully cover the areas that are not going to be painted. Take a strip of paper and wrap it around over the top. I really should. I mean, it might be overkill, but rather than take a chance, right? Tape over that seam as well. Okay, that definitely is overkill, but I don't want to take a chance with it. I've got plenty of this blue tape. And I'm just going to do all the tops and then the bottom. So I've got it on a roll here. So the tops are protected at least. The bottoms, I don't know. It's the red stripe issue. I'm trying to get the red stripes, and the red stripe just might turn out to be a mess. I don't know. That's the to be seen thing, isn't it? Yet to be revealed on Friday is, do I have a success or do I have a mess? Yeah, it should have done the bottoms first because that's the harder part. Um, always do the hardest thing first, but this is the part that it most needs to be protected. Okay, the bottom part I should, needs to be protected because I don't want to have to redo it. But if worse comes to worse, I can always just reprime it and repaint those. The top part, there's way too much effort that went into painting those screens, getting the lines adequate, and I do not want to do that again. So these things are going to be well protected. So when I do the unmasking, I'm going to be unmasking the bottom first, and if it's really a mess, I may end up just, if I have to redo things, and just leave the top masked. Like massive tape overkill. Oh no. Okay. We lost a whole player. Oh my. Because the dates you couldn't attend ended up losing the player when they could. As a bedtime story. Well, that might not work if it's going to result in like nightmares. And I hope you're able to get the time back, figure out how to do the timing so that you can get back to playing again. It would be a shame if you couldn't, get the schedule right. I know that can be a problem. And that was a problem with our D&D show too, is that we actually ended up losing a player because we couldn't get the timing for him to play. I haven't been paying attention. I've been paying attention to my tape messing up here. I'm trying to hurry too much. I don't need to. Make that too small. Okay, what I'm going to do on the bottom, I thought about doing this and now I'm going to have to, is rather than trying to attach the blue tape to this line of orange tape, is I'm going to put more orange tape on this. Bottoms. And that will give me, it'll stick to itself better. It'll give me something to which to attach the blue tape. Yeah, that'll work. This is a good use of the orange tape. Kind of yellow orange. You know what I mean? The not blue tape. It's the not blue tape. This actually looks much neater than. Oh, it doesn't need to be so close. It looks much neater than some of the other tape jobs I've done. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap this around the bottom then. I'm not too worried about the sides. The sides past that are definitely, should definitely not show. Now, this is already painted the metallic color. Okay, but I still don't want it. I forgot about this. I don't want it on the back. Okay, I want it up to the back. So I need to do this. Just, it's like one more thing that I didn't think of. It's okay on the sides, but not all over the back. Before I paint this, I'll press this down around the edges. but there. I just need to wrap the bottoms of these now. Yeah, I'll be going about, looks like about 10 or 15 minutes longer than usual, but this will be done. I'll be able to paint them, and then on Friday unmask them, and then it'll be either joy or sorrow, right? We've done that before. Will this be happy or will this be sad? Good healthy quantity of blue tape on roll anyway. So I can, I can see that this is going to come to some sort of conclusion anyway. With the taping, I'm pretty sure that the tops will turn out okay. That taping, that masking seemed to go okay. That looks pretty secure. It's the bottom with the red line. So as I said on Friday, what I'll be doing is I'm going to unmask the bottom along the red line there. And if they seem to be okay, then I will be happy about that. Quite happy about that. And if they seem to not be okay, and it looks like it's going to require a lot of rework, I might end up just leaving the top masked. That's got paper on it. That's okay. Yeah, I might end up just leaving the top masked and redoing the bottom. You can see this is the middle part. Okay, that's the panel that needs to be painted that metallic gray. And that's what will be happening between now and Friday. Yes, it will be painted that color. Weird. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm just thinking about and how the time is going. Time is marching on. That's all the songs. You're older than you've ever been, and now you're even older. Time is marching on, and time is still marching on. It's a good thing I remembered this bit. These back parts. Otherwise, I get paint all over the backs, and you think, well, that doesn't matter too much because they're just the backs. But the problem is that the backs they show when this is done because it's a circle, and the outside of the circle is this. So I decided to just leave it the raw plastic, but the raw plastic doesn't need to have paint spatters all over it because then it will look really crappy. I can say that word and still be PG, right? Poopy. It'll look poopy. Okay, and you still ended up losing a player because of scheduling. Can you go ahead anyway? Will you be able to play anyway? Hope so. I hope you don't end up losing your game. The sides are going to look kind of scuzzy, but that's okay because they are supposed to not show because of the pieces that come together. If they do, I can always just put a little touch-up paint, I guess, on them somehow or other, just in case the seams are unseemly. Okay, so when I look at these, sort of just looking at them, I can see that the part that are supposed to be painted the dark gray color are in fact not masked. And everything else is. So I think that's all good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, since I've got the tape out and I've got this piece of cardboard here, is I am going to attach them to the cardboard. This is helpful. Two reasons. One is it allows me to transport them without them flopping all over the place, and the other is it gives me just a, it's just a handy way of keeping them in place. To be spraying up that way and then across that way, of course. I hope it might take 2 coats. It'd be nice if it did in one, but I usually I usually plan on 2 because there's always like a spot that's missed somehow. Two coating things usually covers the spots. Okay, with just one player missing, I guess that's okay. As long as your group is large enough. How many people are in the group playing anyway without that one player? You still have 3 or 4? 4? Well, these white parts on Friday will be dark metallic, and the rest of it will not be. See how that goes, right? Yeah, and I should have a place to put that so I don't knock it over. And these 2 guys, I'm going to go ahead and put them onto a smaller piece of cardboard and prime them. And then on Friday, we'll discover just how much touching up we need. First, it's always about first. In this case, the but first is taking a little bit of time to wash them. Okay, so you're going to end up with 3. 3 is still okay. It's an okay group. I've played with 3 a lot, and it generally works well. You just have to, it's just a little harder to get the group balanced, in terms of healing and damage dealing and things like that with 3 than with 4. But that's a challenge for the DM, right? In terms of the encounters that you get into. They look okay, but it's always so hard to tell until, like I said, until they're primed, and then the flaws become more obvious again. This tape to hold them down because it doesn't pull the paint off. I'm going to paint, this is for priming. I'm going to prime the backs first and then flip them over and prime the fronts. Okay. Other than the mess that I've got here on the work surface, which is typical, I've got Sulu and Spock. Boy, Spock's a lot bigger than Sulu. I wonder if that was true in real life too. They're going to get primed. Then I'm going to check the seams to see how the seams look where I did the sanding today. And if they look okay, then I'm going to go ahead and do Kirk, who's really a mess. Otherwise, I'll need to do some additional sanding and filing, like, I don't know, like maybe in the inseams here. And then these guys are all going to be painted that metallic color that I use for the control panel, for the command chair, Kirk's chair. And then I'll unmask it and see how it ends up looking. So that's going to be Friday. Friday is going to be unmasking and either cheering or crying. Tears, another one of those episodes, tears of joy or just tears. We'll be finding out then. Yeah, about 15 minutes longer than usual. That's not too bad. I'm going to put Kirk's torso in the box of parts and heads. These are the railings. Oh, I should do this. These are the stands for the two minifigs. Those, at some point, those need to be painted the same brown color as as the base. And keep forgetting to do that. And someday I'm going to say, oh, it's time to put this together, the last stage. Put the guys on their stands, and I'll say, no, they need to be painted. But that'll be a different time. Thanks, everybody. I know I went a little bit long today, but I wanted to get this masking done. And I will be back on Friday. Just seeing how this all turned out. Hopefully it'll look good. Thanks. Good luck with your game, Aman, and I'll see you on Friday.